Hey folks, my name is Adrian Simple, and welcome to the World Record Report. It is now officially a series, rather than just a pilot episode, where I interview recent world record achievers about their game and how they got the record. Today, I'm talking to 4 people across 3 games. First of all, we're going to talk to Vicetra and Witchrain, and they are runners for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This is in the 100% category. And there was actually 2 recent world records, so I talked to both of them. Anyway, this segment is really cool. They really get into what makes the game so unique, and as a speedrun game, I just think it's really interesting. Next, I interviewed Primorix, who got the 100% world record in Bastion. And again, this run, also really cool, very, very movement heavy. And so when you watch the footage, you'll see him just rolling around everywhere. It's really cool. And Primorix has been running the game for like many, many, many years, so he's a true expert on it. And finally, I chatted with Ollie for the Blinx 2 All Medals category. He got the world record there. And I've got to say, this interview was so fun. This might be my favorite interview I've ever done on the history of this channel. He is just so extraordinarily enthusiastic and passionate and knowledgeable about Blinx. And anyway, I encourage you to stick around for that segment, if nothing else, because I had a lot of fun with it. Folks, this series is designed such that you don't have to know anything about the game or the speedrun in order to enjoy the interviews. I myself am an outsider to these games, so it's very much an introduction to the game and the speedrun, and hopefully it might even pique your interest in wanting to run the game yourself. If you like this format, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, this is a series, so I'll be doing more of these episodes, and if you have any feedback about the format or the structure or the content or anything like that, I would welcome it, because it is still in the early stages of the series. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to the runners now. Thank you very much, and until next time, farewell.
Hi, my name is Vicetra, and I got the world record for the 100% quest log on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Hi, my name is Witchrain, and I once held the world record for Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. All quests, 100% quest log. It's kind of like a niche game, but like it's like a cult classic kind of thing, you know, where it's like the few people that know about it absolutely are in love with it.
It's got quite a gothic sort of attitude towards it. It's got that sort of angsty, sort of ambient energy towards it, which is, and I mean, I'm going to be real, it speaks to me on a personal level. The any percent category is, you know, for like most games, it's a case of just, you know, getting through the game from point A to B as fast as possible. Whereas with the 100% quest log, it's about going through all the different side quests in each hub or different cities that you go to, which is considerably longer than just getting from point A to B. You're going from point A to C to E to E to back to A to B and so on, and it's the routing on it is all over the place, but I actually really like that about it. Originally, it didn't actually have a category on the SRC leaderboards. There was one person called SST0 that was running it without ever actually having a place to submit that run to. After seeing that he had published his notes and like actually written out this long informative guide on how anyone else could do it, I was like, okay, I'll give it a try as well, because with there only being any percent categories, you don't really get to experience the full. You don't get to experience what the game has to offer for you, but 100% quest log as a category, it makes you interact with so much more of VTMB than you would ordinarily in an any percent run.
The movement is like really in depth. There's a lot of like bunny hopping, and it's precise. It's really kind of hard to pull off and takes a lot of practice. So I like that because it keeps me like busy, so to say, during the whole run, because there's some runs that you just like hold W, hold forward, and just kind of go through the game, which is fine. But you know, I do really like that you're always like really engaged. So there's a lot of bugs that can happen in this game. So I wrote like workarounds in the guide just because like the game is very buggy. It has a very like rocky history, how it came out and stuff, and basically it was like rushed. The most like scary parts of it would be when you are approaching one of these potentially like game killing bugs. Fortunately there is like quick save and quick load.
This game, the reason it's had so many support patches from like unofficial community members and stuff like that is because the base patch of this game is, there's no polite way of putting it, it is not very stable. In fact, it's borderline unplayable.
Yeah, the jank is the scariest part like of the game by far, you know. I think the scariest part for me really is towards the end. There's like this strat where you have to use the flamethrower, and like sometimes it just doesn't work. Like you start flamethrowing, the bad guys, and like they just don't catch fire. Or what could happen is like you're supposed to flamethrow them and then shoot them, they just turn invincible and you can't kill them. So we've managed to do some workarounds for if that happens. But yeah, it's just always something like that. I call it game functionality RNG.
Up until about 15 hours ago or so, Witch Rain actually had the world record for this category. She beat my time by 3 minutes, and I was like, okay, there is no way I'm beating this now, because she's optimized this category so well.
I'm fairly new to bunny hopping, so my movement is not the greatest, but I am getting better at it. Vicetra's movement is like way better than mine. His is amazing. But I was able to take the record because of the optimizations that we've been working on. Plus, I grinded a lot. I played it over and over and over again for like 2 weeks, and it just was the run where there weren't any major bugs and major mistakes or misroutes. I finally had like the route memorized, and yeah, so it was all that.
What did you do in your world record that enabled you to get the world record over the previous?
The game behaved. That's really it. Like, honestly, in my previous personal best, I had bugs where Beckett, that character, wouldn't turn up and I'd softlock. I'd have instances where some of the mobs that you were supposed to actually be able to kill were invincible. I had instances where the flamethrower, which is a weapon to sort of like stunlock bosses and then shred their armor, would just instantly kill me, like upon pulling it out, and it's like, this is tragic. Oh, it's worth mentioning, by the way, that technically there are 2 different versions of the 100% quest log. So there's version 1.1, which is where you can use an exploit or a quirk, however you want to word it, where you can max all your character stats straight from the get-go. Now, the version that SST0 was running was version 1.2, so you can't do that. So one category where you are just God mode from the get-go, and then another one where you're actually routing in like the order of stuff that you want to be taking. Now, I've only ever ran version 1.1 because I'm a dirty cheater. There is actually the version 1.1 down patch files on the speedrun.com page, so I've made a super simple process to actually get started with speedrunning VTMB, whether it's any percent or 100% quest log. It's purely just a case of download the down patch files, drop them in this directory, and you're good to go, which is extraordinarily useful. And there is literally a 3-minute video that I've made on YouTube, which goes from actually downloading VTMB through Steam, dropping the files in, booting it up, and having it ready, for anyone to do.
So hi, my name is Primorix. I recently got the world record for Bastion new game all story levels. Really what kind of dragged me in and has had me stick with it for like years and years now is just like the really, I would say, unique dynamics of the run. So like a big part of the movement optimization is about basically going like just as fast as the level will allow you, and that's kind of interesting in its own way. And then also just finding a lot of ways to like sequence break and just kind of break apart individual levels, which this run has a ton of. Literally, like, we look at these like game scripts that are in like the Steam files, kind of like pseudocode for how the level works, and pretty much try to like construct, how do we get through each level doing as little as possible. Basically, the category name all story levels comes with a restriction. First of all, to complete Bastion, you don't actually have to beat the final level. You just have to get 14 cores or shards, which are kind of the key items that you pick up as you go through each level. And it turns out that there are a couple types of glitches that let you pick up, 2 or in some cases as many as you want of an item just from one instance of it. This basically bans those duplication glitches, and you are pretty much playing through the story in the intended sequence. And the interesting thing is, you're playing in the intended sequence, but then within each level you have a lot of freedom as far as what you can do to kind of break the game open. Like, literally there's one level where kind of midpoint of the level where the core is located, or the shard, and the starting point and the end point are like right next to each other, but you can't quite get across the gap normally. But there's a trick you can do to just get across, get the shard, and then go right back. And you end up doing like none of the level. I think it's like just enough of that it's interesting and not, oh, we're not playing the game at all. I would say I've had the record in this category for probably 4 to 5 years at this point. Like there hasn't been a lot of activity in this one in particular. The main thing from a couple runs I did recently compared to previous ones was just this kind of big like major skip tech that we call space faults. So there's basically a like ability in the game called pike fault, which we had used for like some movement tech to kind of cross over gaps in the air, but it's somewhat limited because basically you leap up and you can move forward for a second or so, and then you just kind of come crashing down. So the amount of distance you can cover is limited, but basically we're storing a menu so that in the middle of the pike vault we actually unequip pike vault. And what this does is it leaves you just like way up in the air with like really no means of getting down other than just like gravity. So you can actually roll in midair. This is just like a feature of like when you get hit in the air by an enemy, you can roll to recover, and kind of the same thing applies. So you can actually cover like several rolls worth of distance without having to be on the ground. The first like half of the run is pretty much just kind of like autopilot, like try really hard just not to make mistakes. Like that's the part that's more movement focused, I would say, and basically you're just trying not to fall and kind of keep the pace reasonable. And then the second half of the run basically is just like almost panic moment after panic moment. Like because like now with what it's become, you have like level after level where you're just doing these like huge skips, and if you mess it up, maybe you're sitting through a whole auto scroller and you can't really make up the time. Or like even in the last level, it's not the hardest level execution wise, but you are carrying a menu through the whole thing, and if you die, you end up like canceling out of the menu in order to continue, and that loses like a minute. It just kills the run. So definitely the second half is a lot more, I would say, on edge and a lot more like trying to remember all the moving parts because there's so much going on, and that's when you really unlock like all of the tech to really like break the later levels apart. On speedrun.com/Bastion, I believe it is, but just the page, we have the Discord server, and I know I have like for this run a like beginner focus guide on the speedrun.com page that should get you started, get you oriented, and not get too much into like all of the crazy world record stuff, because there really is like a gap now between like it used to be more like kind of the record was just pretty much the base strats done really, really well. Now there are some that are just a little too much, I think, to get into right away. Join the Discord and you can definitely get a sense for like what the different runs are, and there's a little bit of something for everybody in terms of length. Like you can go from 5 minutes to an hour in terms of like the different categories.
Hi, my name is Ollie, and I just got the world record for Blinx 2 all medals. The category that I just got a world record in is a very new category for me. As in, well, I'll tell you the story of how I actually got into running it, basically. I'm someone who, I find it quite annoying. One of the biggest barrier to entry of speedrunning for me is learning the entire route of the speedrun. And I mean, I tried to learn, after getting world record in Blinx 2 about 2 years ago, I tried to learn Mario Odyssey. And just the amount of routing that you need to remember within each level, where every single moons go, that was a big disheartening problem for me. So what I did for all medals, this category, is I asked my friend Wet Sweaty Legs from the Blinx community, and I basically said, right, I'm doing a run now. I don't know where all the medals are, but I'm going to do an all medals run, and you're going to tell me where the medals are. And then I essentially within a few runs, I figured out my own route, which is different to the current route, which is actually why the route that I came up with is minutes faster in terms of potential than the old route, which was based off some really old strats, which, well, during the last, about 2020, we found a bunch of new skips, and because of it, it meant that if I learned the old all medals route, I would have, not been implementing the fastest strats in the world. So it was kind of cool for me because it was my first opportunity to do some kind of routing in speedruns. Like, I'm not normally someone who does routing. I found a few strats, but not a lot of strats. I tend to be the one who's playing the game because for some reason I'm the one who's most consistent. But it's probably just because I'm the one who's put the most hours in, to be honest. But yeah, I picked up the game in 2020 towards the end of the year, and I reckon within a couple months, I mean, I'll have a look on speedrun.com how long it took me to get world record, but the game wasn't very optimized at the time. And I don't know if other people realized that, but I definitely realized that the game wasn't very optimized at the time. So yeah, it was about December 2020. I reckon was about a month after I started playing the game where I got my first world record of about an hour and a half. It was my first run. And I got that down by, 20 something minutes now. The game is pretty optimized at any percent at least. The other categories are not the most optimized. I think I could take a little bit more time off them, but I'm always worried that, well, my dream really is to have more people playing Blinx. So I kind of think that if I optimize every single category down so it's, nearly perfect, it might put other people off being able to get the record. So it's kind of like I didn't put too many attempts into some of the other categories. It's a little bit of the story of the game is really random. I think the game is heavily inspired by Sonic Adventure 2. You spend half the time playing as what's known as the Time Sweepers, which are like one clan, and they look after time. They make sure the world's run good. And then there's the Tom-Tom, which are like the evil. They make sure things don't go good. They're time thieves. They love to steal time, whatever that means. I don't really understand. And essentially, the Time Sweeper levels are more platformer, puzzle focused. The Tom-Tom levels is more of a stealth game. You have guns, which is pretty cool for a 3+ age rating game. I thought that was cool when I was 5. Yeah, so it's like a stealth game. You spend time avoiding the enemies and hiding in inconspicuous locations, trying to steal treasure and bring it back to the goal, and that's usually the goal of most Tom-Tom levels. Also, I should have said this before, but the Time Sweepers control time, so you can use the time controls of pause, fast forward, record, slow, rewind, so you can rewind time, pause time, record yourself doing certain actions, and then play that back while you do something else. Slow down, it's quite, that's the whole concept behind the Blinx games. You also gain the ability later on in the game to use multiple time controls at the same time, one of which, for example, is pause and record, which the game doesn't use a single time within the game, but we actually found a way as speedrunners to utilize this time control combo that's not used once within the game to our advantage, which is pretty cool. All medals is a weird one because it was a very quick experience for me, going from, I mean, it was only about 2 days or something from my first ever run, or 3 days or something like that. Because a lot of I was just utilizing the strategies that I'd developed from any percent and the skills and techniques that I'd used from any percent. And really just, I had to complete a run. But one of the biggest strategies that I did bring over from any percent to all medals is a strategy called God Damn It, which is, that's the name of the strategy. It's called God Damn It because use a guard to basically shoot you up to a platform, skipping multiple missions in Tom-Tom 1. And it's really difficult. And also, one of the biggest bonuses of skipping missions is because the game still thinks that you are in mission 1, the game will not give you any text boxes or help whatsoever, which is perfect for a speedrunner because you don't, every single time you get stopped and given some tips, it's just time loss. God damn it saves, I reckon, 3 minutes, something like that. It's such a considerable amount of time that, recently I've been working on a beginner's guide for Blinx 2, because I'm hoping that maybe it might encourage a few new newcomers. That would be really nice to see. And one of my objectives about the beginner's guide is I want to make a route which is approachable for new players, but a route which is also quick enough to be the second fastest time. So the Blinx Discord, is all your resources. Literally just talk to all of us. We're really friendly. We have a dedicated speedrunning channel where, even though we're only a community of, I think, officially 7 people, it's really active all the time. If you post a message in the speedrunning channels, like, we'll be getting back to you within a few hours. Especially if anyone expressed interest in running the game, you know, we'd come flocking to you because, well, probably not because we don't want to intimidate you, but we would come flocking to you.